Hi everyone, I hope you are all safe and healthy with your family and friends. In this video, we are going to learn about 11th Standard Accountancy, Chapter 6, Subsidiary Book 1. Exercise sum number 2. From the following transaction, write up the sales day book of Miss Ram and Co., a stationery merchant. So, what this transaction tells us, we are going to prepare sales day book, which means sales book. What is meant by sales book? Sales book is a subsidiary book that is used to record all the business transactions related to the credit sales, sold of goods for cash, and sales of assets are never recorded in the sales book. Okay, let's see the transaction one by one. The first transaction is 2017 January 1 sold to Anbu and Co on credit. What this transaction tells us? This transaction clearly tells us this is the credit sales transaction. So we can write it on the sales book. 20 reams of white paper at rupees 150 per ream. So before we are going to prepare the sales book, we need to prepare the title of the sales book, and format of the sales book. What is the title? In the books of MS means Miss Ram and Co. sales book, The format of the sales book is, the format contains 5 columns, that is date, particulars, outward invoice number. Whenever you prepare the sales book format, you have to write outward invoice number, and whenever you prepare the purchases book, you have to write in the format inward invoice number. This is the sales book, so you have to write outward invoice number, and LF amount is are divided into two columns, that is details rupees and total rupees. Let's see the first transaction, that is 2017 January 1 sold goods to Anbu and Co on credit. This transaction is the credit sales transaction, so you can go and enter this transaction into sales book, because all credit sales you should enter into sales book. 20 reams of white paper at rupees 150 per ream. So 2017 January 1 we entered in the date column, and then Anbu and Co. Anbu and Co is the customer. Whose customer? Miss Ram and Co's customer. Ram and Co sold goods to Anbu and Co. What are the details are given here? 20 reams of white paper at rupees 150 rupees. How do we calculate? We have to multiply 150 rupees into 20. How much you get? You got 3000 rupees. You directly enter this 3000 rupees into total column. Be entered. Then the second transaction, the next transaction is January 2 sold to Jagadish and Sons on credit. This transaction, what this transaction tells us? This transaction clearly tells us this is the credit sales. So you can enter this transaction into sales book. What the details are given here? 6 dozen pens at rupees 360 per dozen. So on January 2 entered in date column, who is the customer? Jagadish and Sons. What is the detail is given here? Selling details. 6 dozen pen at rupees 360 per dozen. So how do we calculate? We have to multiply 360 into 6. How much you got? You got 2160. You directly enter into the total column. We entered. Then the next transaction is January 15 sold on credit MS Ilango. Listen. January 10 sold old newspaper for cash rupees 620. So here what this transaction tells us? Cash transaction. This is cash sales, and old newspaper, they sold old newspaper for cash. We don't record cash transaction, cash sales into the cash book. So we leave this transaction, then come to next transaction, that is January 15 sold on credit Miss Ilango and Co. So what this transaction tells us? First, this transaction clearly mentioned this is the credit sales transaction. So you should enter this transaction into sales book. What is the detail given here? 10 drawing boards at rupees 170 per piece. Okay. So January 15 is entered into date column. Who is the customer? The customer name is Miss Ilango and Co. We write it in the particular column, and 10 drawing boards at rupees 170 per piece. How do we calculate? We have to multiply 170 rupees into 10. How much we get? We got 1700 is entered into total column directly. Okay, so we entered it. Then the next transaction is January 20 sold to Kani and Co. What this transaction tells us? Listen. 4 writing table at rupees 1520 per table for cash. This transaction should not be recorded in the sales book because sold of writing table is an asset. Why? Because the firm dealing, that firm means Miss Ram and Co. dealing in furniture. Okay. So this is the asset, and they sold asset for cash. So this transaction should not be recorded into the sales book. So we enter all the credit sales transaction into the sales book. Then what we do? We have to add all the amount from the total column. Okay, what are they? 3000 plus 2160 plus 1700. How much we get? We got 6860. So this is the credit sales. Okay, so sales account debtor, so sales account creditor rupees 6860 we find it. Okay, this is the sales book. Do you have any doubt? Please comment it on the comment box. Thank you. Take care.